What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel. Today we are on part 13, I believe it is, of our Pittsburgh Pirates franchise. We're actually at the beginning of the 2022 season, and I needed to bring you guys back in because there's quite a few things to recap, because there were a lot of players put on waivers that we had shots at getting, and some interesting things happened that allowed our roster to kind of develop in ways that I didn't expect it to. So we are only at the end of spring training. We hit the end of spring training. We played our home opener. We won that one pretty easily against the Cubs 10-2. And then in the second game, we actually suffered a 3-4 loss to the Cubs, which was a nice close game. A little bit of a struggle of a performance out of Jameson Taillon, but that's not really what we're here to recap. In this episode, we're here to recap the roster, because a lot of things have changed with the roster even since the last video went up, because I had noticed that there were some issues with the roster composition where we just had too many players at certain levels, and we had some problems and we had to work those problems out. There were players out there on the waiver wire that we could pick up, and I wanted to get all that done before I did a legitimate recap of where we're at with the team. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the team, and we're actually going to kind of go in depth position by position. We're actually going to start at the back end this time and start at right field. So what ended up happening is I shuffled around a couple guys in the outfield to better suit what we're trying to do this season. So obviously we have Travis Swaggerty essentially manning the helm at center field. That is who I feel comfortable with at, starting center fielder. And then Andrew McCutchen is platooning with him in center field and in the outfield in general. So that's nothing of a surprise there, but the differences come in where we moved Jason Martin to right field to platoon at right field, and we moved Brandon Marsh to left field to platoon there. Now, why did I do this? I did this because I think that it's going to just help balance things out for me, rather than having 4 or 5 guys at the MLB level at the center field position. It just, in order to make things easier, make my life easier, and even if the game if I put it on auto at any point that the game decides to adjust the lineups itself, it will then register that these guys are kind of balanced and it's not just 5 guys competing for one position at center field. So that should help us out organizationally, just to kind of keep things structured the way we want them to. So not huge moves, but important moves nonetheless. And I had a chance to trade away Jason Martin. I just decided not to. For some reason, I just really like him as a player. He's very well-rounded. He's got decent speed. He's got decent fielding ability all around. He's got a decent bat all around. And he's a very nice, well-rounded type of player. And I can't see myself moving on from him. Honestly, I think after this year, if Andrew McCutchen were to retire, I think Jason Martin would kind of take his place as the overall platoon, number one platoon type player, just because he is such a good, well-rounded player. So I want to note that I am making every effort that I can to keep Jason Martin around long-term, because I personally like him quite a bit. Travis Swaggerty will be the answer at center field, and then Brandon Marsh as well. He will probably go on to start for another team. I don't know how long we'll be able to keep him around, especially whenever it comes time to negotiate a contract with him. But if it comes to a point where we can't pay a guy like a Brian Reynolds or a JJ Bleday, then it might come to a point where Brandon Marsh could take over one of these positions. So it's nice to have him around still. In terms of the outfield, not a lot changed here, but there are a lot of changes at other positions. So we still have the same guys hanging around here. Our top prospects in Sammy Siani, John Baird's doing really well, Dallas Slattery's there, Richie Bass, Bartolo Gonzalez. I just want you guys to get familiar with those names, because those are guys that could be starting for us in the future. In center field, Leroy Gonzalez here, who we actually did move from left field. He was a 67 or 68 overall. We moved him to center field, and the reason that I moved him to center field is I felt like he kind of fit what we're going to try and do at center field a little bit better with the better speed and everything like that. So I think that structurally he fits in better into the program that we're trying to do here. Tony Quintana behind him. Chris Coronado, who was a draft pick last year maybe, behind him. Richard Sherwood there, and then Dave Warner, who was a draft pick this year, sitting in single A. In left field, what we are rolling with is Cal Mitchell as the top prospect in left field, with Andres Castro behind him. Jarvis Coulter behind him, Christian Reese, and Cristobal Andino. So a nice, well-rounded outfield, a lot of prospects there, a lot of competition going on, but not a lot to note other than a couple of, positional changes going around from center to left to right and so on. In terms of our shortstops, I do want to note that we were able to bring in Wander Franco. Now, this was a trade. I can't remember who we traded away for them, but I know that he was on the trade market because what team did he play for? The Rays maybe had like 3 or 4 A potential shortstops in front of him, actually. So he was out there available. We certainly did not need him in any way, shape, or form, but I figured it's not going to hurt us to add him if we need to trade him away at another point. That would be a really nice trade asset, but I figured it was pretty important to get him while we could because we had the assets there to do so. So that is a very important pickup for you guys to note. Then we have Adrian Valerio behind him, Dylan Wakefield back there, who was our draft pick, and then Oliver Velasquez. At third base, we have Ke'Bryan Hayes. We actually picked up A.J. Reid, who was a first baseman. We're going to try and play him at third base. I don't know if it's going to work out well because he doesn't have the best of arms. And I actually think what I want to do is I want to put Joe Rizzo in AAA, and I'm going to make this change now, and I want to start A.J. Reid in AA, and that's kind of how I wanted to roll out, so that is an important change. Another important change is J.J. Matajevic has switched from first base to third base to kind of better fill out what we're trying to do in terms of like our AA roster and everything here, and then Antonio Reyes is behind him. And then the most important pickup that we were able to make is we were able to obtain Gavin Lux. Now, Gavin Lux has not progressed very well for the Dodgers in this franchise, and I don't know that I plan for Gavin Lux to be a starter on our team. I think it's more of a trade piece type of thing. We're just going to bring him in because we were able to and hold him until he can go and start for another team, and then we'll put him on a team that he can start for. But we were able to bring him in, and I couldn't pass up the opportunity to bring him in because the Dodgers actually have a second baseman in front of him that is significantly better in Michael Busch. I don't know if this is a real player or not, but I know that he is there in game. So we were able to bring him in. What this is going to do is that's going to bump Leo Peguera down to AA. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to affect things. That could negatively affect Peguera, so we will see how things play out. If it does negatively affect him, we will consider moving Gavin Lux again and bumping Leo Peguera up to AA. But as you guys can see, we didn't have a whole lot of depth at second base, so I felt it was prudent to bring an additional prospect in for us. And then at first base, I don't think anything's changed here. Actually, no, incorrect. We brought in Dylan Cozens, who is naturally a right fielder, but we decided to bump him down to first base as a prospect for us, just to kind of round things out because Matajevic went over to third base. And like I said, we are trying to restructure things slightly. So Mason Martin will be our AAA third baseman, Dylan Cozens our AA third baseman, and then this allows us to not have to start a 48 overall. I think that that's kind of where the problem was coming in, was that I didn't want to start a 48 overall in AA. I would like for once for our AA and AAA teams to actually make some noise and maybe compete for the AA and AAA titles. So we are trying to avoid having a 48 start there, and so we brought in Cozens to be able to do that for us, which bumped down Bob Barnard to basically the second AA player, first baseman, and then Brian Nalot and Salvador Escobar down to single A. In terms of our catchers, obviously Sean Murphy is still there with Dalton Varsho as the platoon to him. And then we have Leonard Berry, who we brought in, who is going to be essentially our top catcher prospect. I don't know that he's ever going to see time for this team because I really do like the combination of Murphy and Varsho. I'm really excited about that combination. But we moved on from Arden Pabst and guys like that to bring in a slightly better catching prospect. Not too much else to note here. I will just go through the names so you guys can get familiar with them, with Randall Pearsall, Peter Sweat, Greg Medina, William Zhu, and Luther Grayson rounding out the catchers. And then I don't believe we have any changes in terms of our pitching staff. We've obviously got Keone Kela and Batista, but then we have the prospects in Darryl Donald, Rob Kloboff, Jared Erdman, and Henry Rosario. So I don't know if I covered them in the last video, but that's how those things are playing out. In terms of our relief pitchers, it is as we had stated them before, with Bradley, Bummer, Foster, Fairbanks, Diaz, Hernandez, and Tuki Toussaint up in the major leagues. I thought that it was prudent to bring him up because he's up to his 71, so we will see if he can do anything for us. And then it is, Lolich, Hunter Harvey, Alvaro Armas, Barton Castle, Matt Eckelman, Dean Kramer, Jeff Hartlieb, Luis Escobar, Joe Jacques, Gene Taylor, and Archie Knotts rounding out our relief pitchers. So some decent competition going on with our relief pitchers. And then at starting pitcher, I don't know if I recap this situation. Brendan McKay was available, and I absolutely could not pass up the opportunity to bring in Brendan McKay as a starting pitcher, as a Pennsylvania kid, to bring him home to play in Pittsburgh. So I think that this was a really important move for this organization. As far as I know, he is a two-way player. I don't know if it will allow us to play him two-way. I don't really know how that works in MLB anyway, in the game. But that strengthens our rotation. He essentially takes Waddell's spot, and I think that that's a nice move for us. I don't know how things are going to play out long-term with that, because that is going to prevent some of these other guys from coming up. But what I will say is that in terms of our pitching rotation, in terms of our depth here and our farm system, nothing has changed. We have Toby McVale, Otis Matthews, Prince Hoff, Brennan Malone, Sam Deerdorf, Quinn Priester, John Duplantier, James Marvell, Gage Hines, Desmond Sable, and Amos London. Now, there were a couple player cuts because we did end up over the roster because of waiver claims and whatnot. But what I just want to say is that there were some pretty important moves here. Not all of them are super realistic, but I think in general what I'm trying to do is I'm going to try to keep the starting roster as realistic as possible. I know that we brought in guys like Gavin Lux and whatnot, but chances are they're not going to end up starting for us. Chances are they're just going to be kind of a trade piece to continue to build our farm system as we progress, and then players start to leave our team after a certain amount of time. So that is the recap that I wanted to do for you guys today. I will be back with you guys after we've played probably a significant amount of games. We'll obviously finish out March here, and we'll probably finish out at least April before I come back to you with another update. Unless something significant happens between then and now, I'll come back to you guys with another update. So hopefully you guys enjoyed at least getting to know the roster a little bit and knowing the prospects. This is the first time I think I've really gone that in depth and covered every single player, just so that you guys know who exactly is on the team and who our future prospects are and what exactly our plan is moving forward. If you did enjoy this, make sure you leave a like on the video, comment down below if you guys enjoyed it, maybe what you guys want to see out of the series. Is there a player you might want to see on this team, a player that you might want to help build this dynasty around? Feel free to let me know in the comment section. In addition to that, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Check out the rest of the content on the channel. I greatly appreciate all your support. I'll see you guys in the next one. I hope you guys have a great night.